Welcome to Player Profiler's Reddit Dynasty AMA. And every Monday, Dario Offstien and I are here answering your questions both on Reddit, also on YouTube, and pretty much any other way you want to get us your questions. But today we're joined by Evan Ringler. So we're going to the mattresses here. I'm joined by two of our best data analysis people, best dynasty minds at Player Profiler. Dario, we get back-to-back weeks where we actually have stuff to talk about. Last Monday, the two of us sat down and we discussed the fallout from the NFL Combine. Today, we're getting data dump after data dump. You've had Tony Pollard signing with the Tennessee Titans, Gabe Davis signing with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and then we also get the big one. DeAndre Swift is now going to be a top 6 paid running back in the NFL, gets an absolute bag from the Chicago Bears to come and be the new de facto RB1. Which was the biggest impact signing so far for you, Dario?
That's tough. I mean, I think it's probably Pollard. I mean, he's definitely going to – you think he'd see more touches than Swift? I guess maybe not.
I don't think so. I'll go Swift. But I see what you're saying. Like the it's less clogged. But Evan and I talked about this in the pre-show. You don't pay DeAndre Swift that money for some ugly three-way split to protect the rookie quarterback.
I mean, that's what we said about Miles. That's what we said about Miles Sanders last year.
This is true, but DeAndre Swift's shown us more juice throughout his career than Miles Sanders. Talking about DeAndre Swift.
Breaking news right now is Packers expected to sign Josh Jacobs, according to
Wow, Dario, we buried the lead. Josh Jacobs to the Packers.
Wow.
Let's start getting these Reddit questions. Evan, same question for you. Ignore the Josh Jacobs one. We're going to dive into that because I got to process it. Pollard or who would you rather roster next year? Pollard or DeAndre Swift?
I think Swift. He's just more explosive than Pollard. The offense should be better than Tennessee. And I think he should see a higher workload than Pollard as well. The Gabe Davis signing could also be kind of interesting. Ridley got really good usage last year. So it's not super sexy, but it could be it was a great landing spot for Gabe for sure.
Calvin Ridley had 25 red zone targets last year. So like Gabe Davis, I don't think it's a like for like replacement, but I do agree with you in terms of a big bodied wide receiver who can win in the red zone and have spike weeks with Trevor Lawrence. It's a lateral move, if anything, for Gabe Davis and potential to be even more, just considering the fact that right now Christian Kirk and Evan Engram are very different than him. So I agree with you, Evan. That's an interesting one. Dario, let's take one question in the chat here in Reddit. What's up, Theo? And then they say, we've seen the fallout of a once ultra-hyped 2021 quarterback class. Trey Lance is a backup. Mac Jones is now a backup to Trevor Lawrence. Zach Wilson is likely a backup, and Justin Fields is going to be traded. Was 2021 a cautionary tale of propping up average QBs because they get great NFL draft capital, or is 2024 destined to be a different story of value success? This is a great question. I would say the 2021 class, when we look back at it, Zach Wilson and Trey Lance were pushed up because people believed that they could be something big in the NFL. Neither one of them, like when we started the draft evaluation process, Trey Lance and Zach Wilson were not viewed as, top 5 type draft selections. Trevor Lawrence was always the chosen one. Justin Fields, if anything, Dario, we were like, after that Clemson game, we were sort of a little bit surprised that he fell to that level in the NFL draft where he didn't go in the top 15 picks. He went a little later than that. So for me, I do think there was something about Wilson and Trey Lance were both smaller. And again, BYU is not a small school, but it was a lesser schedule for him. And Trey Lance, certainly from a small school with less of a sample size, I think those two guys were sort of propped up with teams chasing it.
It was certainly
position.
A projection,
by
the teams making those picks. Very much kind of following what we've seen with Mahomes and Josh Allen, where teams are willing to take these swings now with very high draft capital. I think we just need to remember that like half of all prospects or more are going to bust. Like that's part of the process. And I mean, I think we're talking about possibly 4 quarterbacks going in the first round this year. I think the way you apply that lesson is be aware of that. Like, I mean, Caleb Williams and Drake May both look awesome and borderline bulletproof. And Jaden Daniels looks like he could be another coming of Anthony Richardson, and JJ McCarthy might be like a more athletic Kirk Cousins. But that's like the ceiling for all these guys. If 3 or 4 years from now, only 2 of them are starters in the NFL, that's par for the course, honestly.
You know, I don't know. Caleb Williams is a can't miss. I also think that we can't let a hyped class like 2021 influence our decision making. I think we really do need to take it as every class is a different evaluation. Every class is something where we need to take a step back and look at them as individuals instead of trying to say this could happen because it happened this year. And I realize, we get a lot of data and historical analysis when we're able to study previous draft classes, but like Drake May, we knew was going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft to start his season. Caleb Williams was the number 1 pick last year if he would have came out. I do think Jaden Daniels had an ascent, but Dario, the guy, won the Heisman.
I mean, I think you could if you really want to draw parallels, May is Lawrence and Williams is a better version of Fields. You have 2 guys that seemed like they would go 1-2 entering the season. Like, the fact that those guys' careers have gone the way they have has definitely been a disappointment. And then, Daniels is certainly much more intriguing as a prospect than Trey Lance was. And you don't have, the starts to fall apart when you say, okay, maybe Wilson. I think Daniels and McCarthy are both better than Wilson and Lance. Seemingly, we could say that right now, and with what we thought about those guys as prospects. But I think it's like that wide receiver class in 2021. I think 2022. It's like, oh, we all thought Dotson and Burks and London and Wilson and Olave, none of them could miss, but obviously some of those guys did, and that's kind of just the nature of the NFL. It's not that easy to translate college production to the NFL. It's not that easy for that talent to hit. And believe me, I want to see Drake May and Caleb Williams light it up, but it's not the most likely outcome that all 4 of those guys are NFL starters long term.
Do we have confirmation, Evan, on this Josh Jacobs signing, or is it still just speculation at this point?
I can check.
Thank you.
That's a big one. It was rap sheet, so I believe it.
I believe it too. I just, wow,
that's crazy.
And that's what an upgrade to go from AJ Dillon, losing him as a free agent, and signing Josh Jacobs. You've got to think that possibly Aaron Jones's days are numbered in Green Bay.
Yeah, because that was trending toward a restructure or a cut. So you have to think they're going to let him out.
And Aaron Jones becomes another domino, guys, where the level of play we saw from Aaron Jones in the NFL playoffs, this is a player that if Green Bay is going to go younger and a little bit more durable, a little more bell cow in Jacobs, Aaron Jones on the free agent market is going to have a number of suitors who look at him as a guy who could come in and help their team right away in 2024, whether he's the RB1 or in some kind of weird split where maybe he's used as a receiver more out of the backfield. Aaron Jones will be a really interesting name to follow for the next few weeks.
Yeah, I was really in on Aaron Jones just a couple weeks ago. This is just a shock. But yes, I agree. Aaron Jones, wherever he goes, will probably be a very useful fantasy asset.
So, Dario, I'm taking that first question. If you see any questions in the YouTube chat, Dario, feel free to throw them out. Because, guys, as you notice, sometimes if it looks like I'm ignoring the show, it's because I'm typing on Reddit.
Yeah. All right, Evan, how crazy is it to have the 3 receivers over May and Jaden Daniels in a super flex league? I guess where's the line for you between Odunze? I mean, really, it's like Odunze, Neighbors, May, Daniels, Superflex, hit us.
I don't think that that's ridiculous at all. I think that I feel safer with the receivers, as we just talked about. Evaluating these rookie quarterbacks is very difficult. No one is that good at it. So I don't think it's ridiculous at all. It's one big tier for me. and I'd be happy to get any of them. So I think the correct move is just to trade back.
I think that we've seen the immense success from rookie wide receivers early on in the NFL the last few years. Dario, we've had 3 out of the last 4 years where we've had a top 6 PPR finisher that was a rookie wideout with Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and this year with Puka Nacua. These guys like Rome Odunze, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Malik Neighbors are incredibly safe picks that also give you incredible upside. So I think it comes down to structural choices for your dynasty team. If you're set at the quarterback position and you don't want to take on any sort of risk, I think going with those guys is perfectly fine. They're all also going to get very high NFL draft capital. It's not like we're asking you to bet on some wide receiver that we absolutely love at Player Profiler who's going to be like the 18th overall selection. We're asking you to kind of bet on a guy like a Rome Odunze might go 6th overall, and we would bet on him probably being the 3rd one selected, but I think him and Neighbors are pretty close. So I don't think it's a bad thing this year, Dario. That being said, game theory-wise, it's difficult passing on highly drafted quarterbacks in Superflex because if those guys hit their immense value, they're potential 5+ year starters that could give us big time fantasy production, and also the amount of trade equity you get with a mid QB2 and up at the quarterback spot in Superflex, it's substantial. But I agree with Evan; those guys are really, really good. And it's not like you're eschewing like a really, really great quarterback for an okay wide receiver.
What did you just say? Eschewing?
Oh, whoops. I misspoke. Passing on. Sorry about that.
No, I'm just messing with you, Theo.
Listen, I got to keep it classy with Evan in the chat here. There's 2 very smart young guys here. I'm the old guy. And I guess if this was like a man versus machine episode, Dario, I guess I'd be the man and you guys would be the 2 machines.
Yeah, you'd be outnumbered for sure.
I would. 2 machines.
I think that, I'm pulling up our dynasty rankings right now to see just how close we have it in Superflex. I think unless your team is just like so set at quarterback that you don't even need to think about it, I probably wouldn't draft one of the receivers over Daniels, especially with that rushing upside. But like Evan said, the answer is trade down. Like if you're at the 103 in Superflex and your team is like, oh, I mean, I've got 3 elite quarterbacks right now. I don't need to take Jaden Daniels here. Like try to trade down to the 105 or something like that and get a little bit of that value for the fact that you're passing on the quarterback in that spot.
Question from Reddit: which free agent wide receiver could make the biggest splash dynasty wise? I mean, I don't like it, but it's probably Calvin Ridley based on the quality. Yeah, it's definitely Ridley. It's such a thin market. I think that there's a chance that we could see a wide receiver that gets traded that makes more of an impact.
What cracks me up is we all knew this was going to happen, right? Like a month ago, everyone was like, "Oh my gosh!" I mean, Pittman and Higgins and who else? Like all these guys. Oh, they're gonna be free agents, but like those receivers never hit free agency. It was always going to end up being Calvin Ridley and Gabe Davis and Hollywood Brown that like some team is going to overpay for. I was shocked to see Gabe Davis not get more money than this. I thought for sure he was going to end up north of 50, closer to $60 million. Seeing him get more like MVS money for $40 million over 3 years, I'm going to be so out on him in every format.
Yeah, I think these teams are seeing how good this receiver class is. They can go get receivers that are better than Gabe Davis in the draft and pay them a lot less. So,
question from YouTube, from Koa X Kai: what are you guys doing with JSN and Dynasty? I think at this point, after the Tyler Lockett signing, I am holding or I am buying because I still believe in the talent profile, and I'm not going to let a Tyler Lockett re-signing kind of like knock me off of that one. I think a couple weeks back, he was not a buy because the market for him was still pretty strong. But right now, you're going to have some dynasty managers who are a little bit scared of the situation, that want a sort of a somewhat of a guarantee of what they're going to get in 2024. And they're actually open to the idea of re-rolling a JSN pick. So in single QB, I turned down a 107 for JSN offer. And we talked about this on Sonic Truth today about how I think it was the 111 Cody and Allen were trying to trade to get JSN, and they're not having any success with that. So this is a guy that we believed in the talent profile a lot last year, Dario. Obviously disappointing last year with only 600 receiving yards, but JSN can ball. That at the end of the day, this is Dynasty. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, I think Josh Larkey had a good tweet about how realistically the outcome was that Tyler Lockett would stick around in Seattle all along. He was still good last year. People like to, bash him in fantasy because he's so prone to spike weeks and then disappearing other weeks. But Tyler Lockett still got it. They had no reason to let him go. They actually would have had more dead money if they released him than restructuring him like they did. So I think that the talk of Tyler Lockett being cut was always a little bit overdone. And if anything, maybe that was the sell window for JSN. And now it's the, flip side of that, the buy hold window, because, you're not going to get as much for him now. The market has adjusted. And I think that, like you said, we believe in the talent. I still think he's got it. And it's just a matter of waiting for that path to open up. And I still wouldn't rule out the possibility of that happening this year. I think people are like, oh, great, it's not going to happen for JSN again this year, because we saw this last year where he was number 3 on this exact same totem pole. But injuries are always a possibility. He's going to be in year 2. That's going to be a leap. He already had I think it was 17 or 19% of the targets in that offense. Hopefully we see his ADOT go up, but there's a lot of signs that he could still improve even with those other guys continuing to be on the Seahawks. I'm with you that he's a buy or a hold.
Well, and one other factor is we go from Pete Carroll, who was a little bit of a caveman in terms of what he wanted to do, wanted to get these tight ends involved, wanted to get multiple running backs involved. Now we're going to Mike McDonald. Seems like a very forward-thinking guy as a head coach, makes what maybe my favorite hire of the entire offseason at the offensive coordinator position, hires Ryan Grubbs. And if anybody's unfamiliar with Ryan Grubbs, this is a smartest man in the room type vibe he gives off. Was dominant at Fresno State at leading that offense. Did the same thing at the University of Washington last year with a lot more eyes on him, leading them to the national championship game. And Dario, they're in 3 wide receiver sets at both schools. They both had a very high pass to run ratio, very effective in terms of protecting the quarterback and producing in the passing game at the same time. I think that Ryan Grubbs stylistically could be really, really good for JSN, and I expect him to be on the field a ton. I think it's going to be 3 wide receiver sets. You could see a little bit of Geno Smith kind of dead cat bounce dynasty value after a really, really strong 2022, kind of a quiet 2023. He could be back to mid QB2 numbers in 2024. All right, where are we at in the Reddit chat, Dario? Any good ones?
I was just answering a question about Khalil Shakir.
Go for it.
This guy is asking whether he's a sell now. What do you guys think about whether he's shown enough as a 5th round pick to be kind of ascending, or whether the Bills probably take a wide receiver? I'm curious your thoughts, and then I'll tell you guys what I had to say.
Shakir is, yeah, Shakir, what are we getting though with him? This is the thing. It's not, I don't think there's a huge market for Shakir. Even with the success to end last season in the second half of the year, you're still talking about a day 3 NFL draft pick who landed in a great spot and had a couple of good games. I don't think there's a huge dynasty market for him. He's sort of a purgatory value. If he's on your roster, you're probably just holding him at this point. I think that Buffalo is going to draft a receiver in the first round. Makes a lot of sense based on the quality of the class, based on the age of Stephon Diggs, based on what they've done the last 2 years, addressing the running back spot with James Cook, addressing the tight end spot with Dalton Kincaid. It would just make sense for a smart franchise like Buffalo to dive into one of the draft's best positions and a position of need. Losing Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs getting older, I think the writing's on the wall, Dario. I think they draft one.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I had to say.
Yeah.
Evan, anything to add?
No, I think Theo makes a good point. Pretty much everyone thinks that they're going to draft a receiver, which means that Shakir's price is not super high, and it might not even be worth selling.
So here's
Yeah,
a
I kind of
question in the
said,
chat.
like,
I'm
if you
sorry.
can talk someone into thinking that he'll get like 12 to 15% of the targets, like absolutely ship him off. But I think most people would not be at that state. I think this is another good one. Assuming you have a wide receiver heavy roster in a half PPR non super flex dynasty league going into the rookie draft with the 102 and the 103, would you ship off the 102 for Cup and James Cook? That's basically neighbors.
Say that again one time.
Cup and James Cook for the 102, basically Malik Neighbors.
All day, 24/7, I would do that trade. That's not even a question. I want Malik Neighbors' side in easily.
Right. This is coming from the person who has the 102. So don't
do
that trade.
Do not do that.
Definitely not.
Okay, so some values I've seen for the 102 in single QB.
For what it's worth, this is half PPR 10 team.
You don't want to adjust it too much. It's not. I don't think we adjust it too much.
Yeah.
And in 10 team, I would say in 10 team, Dario, those guys like
you're better off
James
having those
Cook,
studs. I mean, Cup is
James Cook doesn't mean anything to you. Like having running back 12 in a 10 team league doesn't mean anything. And James Cook, for as good as he is not a guy we're going to bet on to be a top 5 running back. It's not something. If he does it, it's going to be a one-off. It's not a guy we'd want to bet on with that profile. Cup is, guys. I mean, Cup conceded usage to Puka Nacua, pretty heavily to end last year. He gets hurt a lot lately. It feels like we're chasing that big perfect season he had a few years back. Whereas Malik Neighbors, if I can have a guy that's a top 5 type wide receiver, it's even more impactful in 10 team than it is in 12 team. So I'm going for shooting for the best possible outcome, Malik Neighbors. And guys, we've got Malik Neighbors as the best value among all 3 of those guys by a wide margin in our dynasty ranks at Player Profiler.
Yeah, and in that situation, maybe I would look to ship the 102 plus for a Breece Hall, a Bijan. You said a wide receiver heavy roster, so he probably needs an elite running back, and especially in that shallow half PPR format, you should go all in on a Breece Hall, Bijan type.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah, exactly.
Huge news, guys. Huge news. Kirk Cousins to Atlanta.
Wow. Okay, Dario.
My Drake London table pounding has finally some promise.
It's great. Great for the whole offense.
I mean, it definitely seemed like it was headed this way for the last few days. I think this isn't shocking to anyone. This is more like confirmation, and we heard the news about them shopping for a home. But this is really exciting for that offense because they've got Zach Robinson as the offensive coordinator coming in from the Rams, and guess what? You go full circle. Rams system, Kevin O'Connell, Vikings, Kirk Cousins lighting it up last year for fantasy. So I think the question becomes how many weeks until Kirk Cousins is his full self again, at least in terms of 2024. But it's a 4-year deal. If we're talking about Drake London's dynasty value, like, I'm feeling pretty damn good, guys. I don't know about you.
I think that it's incredible. There's nothing but winners for Atlanta. You have to like it for Kyle Pitts, a player whose market is sort of all over the place right now. Bijan Robinson, and first of all, low key, the Justin Fields rumors when they were out there, like, this is 100 times better for Bijan Robinson. You're going to have a quarterback who's willing to check down to the running back position, a quarterback that's willing to target running backs out of the backfield, and Dario, a quarterback who's not a threat around the goal line whatsoever. The goal line back is clearly Bijan Robinson. He's the one who's going to eat in short yardage. Bijan's a huge winner. And also the pie grows larger for the whole Atlanta offense. The touchdown opportunities for Bijan are there. Drake London might be the biggest winner here. This is going to be the highest quality quarterback play that he's had as a pro by leaps and bounds. A mile is right.
I mean, if we're looking at just like play volume, it's absolutely crazy. I think I have this on hand because I was just doing it for 2024 projections. Last year, the Vikings had 631 pass attempts, while the Falcons had 530. That's 100 more pass attempts being added to the offense. That's easily 25 more targets for Drake London, 20 more targets for Kyle Pitts, 20 more targets for Bijan Robinson. And I'm sure they were on an even higher pace before Kirk Cousins got hurt. We'd have to dig a little deeper to pull that number up. And I mean, this is going to be absolutely sick for that trio of Bijan, Pitts, and London.
Yeah, and for Cousins himself, this really solidifies his value where we get to see him play indoors. In every single home game is going to be a Kirk Cousins indoors game. There's really nothing but winners here. It's the potential losers here are some of the Minnesota players, namely Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson. Some of the names being attached to this Minnesota quarterback position are disgusting when we get to Dynasty. Like Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson. These names are actually out here.
Russ is off the table now, too. I mean, that was a conversation of whether Russ would go to like whichever of Atlanta, Minnesota didn't get Kirk Cousins. Russ is obviously going to the Steelers, as we know. I mean, this seems like it pencils in the fact that the Vikings are going to look to draft a quarterback. We know that they were trying to trade up last year to get in on the Anthony Richardson sweepstakes. So don't be surprised if they try to move up to number 4, maybe.
I think they should. I think they should mortgage their future to go get a quarterback now. Otherwise, I mean, they could go get Justin Fields. That's another option. I wouldn't hate that, but then they have to pay him. I'd rather just go get the rookie.
They have to. Minnesota's hands are tied now. They have to trade up in the draft. 11 overall might not even be J.J. McCarthy land right now. The way McCarthy's schemed up.
I think that the Vikings kind of knew this all along. Like that team and that roster has been due for a reset and a rebuild for maybe 2 seasons now. And that was something they couldn't do while they were paying Cousins that top money. I think they made it very clear that they tried to keep Cousins so the fans wouldn't get too pissed. But I think they knew all along this was going to be the offseason that they had to reset their franchise.
This is what a wild day, guys. If we would have just waited an hour to do this AMA, we could have actually had a time to process the Jacobs and Cousins news. Evan, we could start talking about trade partners, but it seems to me like the most logical trade partner for Minnesota is going to be New England, because it sounds like New England prefers Jaden Daniels a great deal to Drake May. And it sounds like the Washington Commanders also prefer Daniels to Drake May. So Washington takes Jaden Daniels, Minnesota trading up and getting Drake May, or trading up and getting J.J. McCarthy. That 103 seems like the safest spot to get their quarterback of choice. Would you agree on that?
Oh, yeah. That would be just amazing. The Patriots need to at least explore trading down. Their roster is in shambles. They just paid Gabe Davis money to Kendrick Bourne. It's ugly out there in New England, and their defense is really bad too. So yeah, they should definitely explore trading down. If the Vikings can get a top 3 quarterback in this draft, that would just be amazing. Just exactly what they need. And McCarthy is a great 4th quarterback too. If they can get him, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, McCarthy seemed like he was going to be the fail-safe for a while, and I think that's a fine one to get. The only issue with McCarthy versus those other 3 is I do think that McCarthy is the kind of guy that a little bit more, not quite the Jordan Love path, not quite the Jalen Hurts path, but a guy that you maybe don't want to throw out there in week 1. Maybe you let him sit for half of the season, sit for 6 games, get his feet set, and then put him out there. So it would require them also bringing in a bridge quarterback, whether it's a Jacoby Brissett, a Gardner Minshew, somebody like that. That's the only kind of negative thing, is you're still going to have to move up for him. You're not going to be able to use him right away. At least that's how I'm reading it. But some of these teams are so into J.J. McCarthy that they might completely disagree on that and just throw him out there week 1. Gosh, this is This is crazy, guys. Kirk Cousins and Atlanta Falcon. It actually happened. And there's
Yeah.
another.
I mean,
Four-year
we have-
contract too.
Ryan Tannehill bridge.
Tony Pollard to the Titans is not something we've like thoroughly analyzed yet either. I mean, I think that's kind of it seems like an odd fit to me that the Titans are investing at running back at all. What
One
do
of the
you guys
worst
make
O
of that?
lines. One of the worst O lines in the league. Will Levis, he's just kind of okay at best. I think the offense is going to be one of the worst in the league probably, and the backfield is going to be split 50-50. So I'm not super interested in either running back unless there's an injury.
I think that it's an interesting offense because I think Callahan is going to try to do something stylistically that he did in Cincinnati. You bring up the quality of the offensive line. I think that on paper, Tennessee looks like a team that really should go with an offensive tackle at 7 overall. But I think if one of those guys, one of those wide receivers is sitting there, I think Callahan's just going to pull the trigger. I think if Odunze or Neighbors happens to be there at the 107, he's going to draft those guys. And that could be a low-key, sneaky spot because it could be somewhat of a split with Pollard and Spears, maybe a 60-40 split, whereas one of those rookie wide receivers landing there in like the Jamar Chase role with a lot worse quarterback play than Jamar Chase had as a rookie, but still the Jamar Chase role in a Callahan offense, that could be an intriguing spot. Because like you said, Evan, boring offense, they need an identity, and one of those guys stepping in as like an alpha, highly used wide receiver 1 could be it.
Yeah, that would make sense.
All right, Dario, take another question in the chat. I'm typing away on Reddit.
Yeah, I'm also typing away as we speak.
Okay, so I'll
I'll
pause my typing. Let me find another one. Okay, here's one thought. With the indecision at quarterback, where's your cutoff point for a Justin Jefferson? This is a guy that is one of the most talented players in the entire NFL, but is this a potential pivot to go get an Amon-Ra St. Brown plus maybe if you're a Justin Jefferson manager based on what could be a rough 2024 on paper, whether it's a rookie quarterback or whether it's one of these stopgap guys, it's not nearly as good as having Kirk Cousins. Your thoughts, Dario?
I think he's still too good to be like anywhere below the 105 in redraft or that top wide receiver tier in Dynasty. Like, sure, I guess if you're super set on selling right now, which again, probably not the best time to sell when everyone else is trying to do that. But if you're that set on it, I mean, like Amon-Ra Plus is a good pivot. But I think I'm holding. It's like the same thing we said about JSN. Like the dude, I mean, it's same thing we said about JSN, but like times 100 because Justin Jefferson's already been looking like the best receiver in the league since his rookie year. I mean, this is
maybe the best fantasy asset.
I'm not going to
you're not selling him for a loss.
Here's a good trade question, though, guys. Okay, standard scoring, 10-team league. So little less, the receiving numbers don't really matter nearly as much here in standard. 10-team league, I'm going to assume that this is. I'm going to
probably one
FF Bearded Prince. Or if this is super flex, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is going to be standard, and it's also going to be a non-super flex.
Yeah.
DeAndre Swift or the 201. So the 111 for you 12 teamers or DeAndre Swift, Evan.
I mean, the 201 is an interesting pick. It's probably going to be a receiver that we like, possibly to a landing spot that we like. Maybe one of those guys that's in the late first of the NFL draft to the Chiefs, Ravens, Bills. Could be a really interesting player. I would take that 201 over Swift, I think. But I think it's a totally fair price.
I think it gives you more,
like you said,
yeah.
Swift could get a large workload in a good offense in Chicago.
It gives you more positional flexibility with your dynasty roster. Whereas Evan brought up, there's going to be appealing. There's going to be a very appealing wide receivers there. There's also a chance in a 10-team non-super flex that like Caleb Williams is there or Jaden Daniels if you're struggling with the quarterback position. And there's a chance that after the NFL draft, there's a few running backs that we like more than DeAndre Swift. It would take a great landing spot, but let's say that Marshawn Lloyd is a Dallas Cowboy. Let's say that Blake Corum is a Los Angeles Charger. There's scenarios where these guys land well, and we all of a sudden like them more than a Swift in Chicago. So I think it's a pretty fair trade, but you could go either way on this one.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's good for DeAndre Swift getting paid. This is definitely probably a little bit more than what we would have expected. It kind of makes you wonder what the hell the Bears are doing once again. But I think that he should get the touches. The receiving usage, I think, depends on, Caleb Williams is a mobile quarterback. Like that running back target share might not be there the same way that we would expect to see it from, say, Drake May. If depending on how that coin flip plays out with them possibly trading the 101 down to the 102 or all that stuff. I think
one thing I will say is that Shane Waldron is a very creative run game coordinator, so that could be good for Swift.
Yeah, and Swift has always had that explosiveness. I think that, as we get into these running back second contracts is when you start to worry about how much longer they'll have that. I think that we saw with Miles Sanders, as soon as he left that Philadelphia offensive line, what happened. So that's probably going to be a cautionary tale this whole offseason when anyone who's pounding the table anti-Swift is going to, draw the parallels to Miles Sanders in 2023. But I'm with you that I think he's a more talented back and is going to have more. I was going to say more opportunity, but Miles Sanders had all the opportunity before he just choked flat on his face. So
it should also be a better offense than Carolina last year.
Yeah, they also had the 101. Too many parallels, Evan.
Yeah.
So what do you think of the Steelers with Russ going over there? We've got another question about that I was just typing away at.
George Pickens. I think George Pickens is interesting, especially with the Deontay Johnson trade rumors. Pickens took a big step forward in year 2. I think that you get, I think that their plan will be to be very run heavy, but even if they're a run heavy offense, they're still going to take shots downfield with Russ. He continually shown that in his career. We saw that last year with Cortland Sutton, and I think George Pickens could do well. Now, what is George Pickens' target ceiling in a Arthur Smith, Russ Wilson offense? Maybe 125.
Maybe
125. I think would be something we'd take if we were George Pickens managers
right now. Let's see. I dialed in the projections already. Kind of tweaked all the teams' play volume. I think that the biggest benefit for all the pass catching weapons in Pittsburgh is that Kenny Pickett was like allergic to throwing touchdowns. That dude, I think he was the first quarterback ever to throw 700 pass attempts and have a sub 2% passing touchdown rate. Just absolutely insane stuff. So the biggest bump that these guys are all going to get is a better receiving touchdown rate. George Pickens, like you said, should benefit from that deep ball. But the reason I currently have him projected for 111 targets in this offense, and I think that's with like some natural. Yeah, I actually knocked down their pass attempts because Matt Canada, for all his flaws, they were moving fast, they were throwing the ball often, just not well. So I have him projected for 530 pass attempts, right around where Atlanta was last year. So I think it's going to be an interesting situation because Arthur Smith's offense is really like designed for a quarterback who wants to make those throws over the middle of the field. You think about Ryan Tannehill's best season in 2019, and then Russ is really best throwing the ball outside the numbers. So how those systems are going to mesh, I think is going to decide whether this offense has any success.
Did you adjust your rankings, or your projections, when Russell Wilson lands there, as opposed to maybe they open things up a little bit more than with a Kenny Pickett or a Mason Rudolph, Dario? Or do you think that it's stylistically pretty much exactly the same?
I just don't know. You kind of have two opposing forces, right? Like the QB upgrade is counterbalancing the offensive coordinator change, right? Like I think that you're still going to have to worry about the fact that Arthur Smith, you could make the case in his defense that they were super run heavy in Atlanta because they knew what they had in Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke. But then again, they spent all offseason defending Desmond Ridder and said they had a good quarterback situation coming into this year, and we saw how that went out. So I think the question becomes like, how much better is washed Russ than those guys? I think he's still some upgrade, but we've seen with Russell Wilson in Denver that he's not the same player he was in Seattle. So it's pretty up in the air for me.
I think that the only way Russ can be a productive NFL quarterback anymore is with a heavy under center run first offense and play action deep shots. That's what he's always been good at. And then when Seattle moved away from that, he got worse. And when he moved away from that in Denver, he got even worse. So if Arthur Smith can lean back into that prime version of Russ and implement a run first offense with outside play action throws, then I think it's possible that we see a little bit of a resurgence.
Mm-hmm. And also,
oh wow, Saquon Barkley is a Philadelphia Eagle,
guys. And Howie Roseman is paid a running back.
Guys, Saquon Barkley is a Philadelphia Eagle.
Yeah, they 26 million guaranteed at signing, 37.75 million over 3 years. I mean, he's like, if you could pay the two guys the same amount of money, wouldn't you rather have Saquon than Gabe Davis in your offense?
Wild times, guys. Wild times. This has been the craziest opening of NFL free agency that we have ever seen in terms of the number of big signings that have just been coming in like a cascade effect here. Saquon Barkley is a Philadelphia Eagle. This has massive implications for everything. This is a player that I think stays about the same in his dynasty value. I don't think we need to. I don't think we need to amplify him. Like, are we going to give him a huge bump here, guys? I'll just say this: we saw DeAndre Swift have 49 targets. Saquon Barkley, one of the appealing things about him has been his ability to catch the football, and that is the one disappointing thing about this signing is we've seen Saquon Barkley have back-to-back seasons of double-digit rushing touchdowns on bad Giants offenses. So touchdowns are a great driver of fantasy success, especially at the running back position. But I do think, not to pour cold water over something that everyone's going to be excited of, they're not going to target him. This is not what Philadelphia does, unless Kellen Moore changes
I would slow
it up,
down
right?
with that narrative. Kenneth Gainwell had 40% of the snaps last year, and he had 37 targets for 30 receptions. I don't think they're like, if you're paying Saquon this much, you're not going to put Gainwell on the field that much. And combined, like, I mean, that basically you're looking at almost 90 targets between Swift and Gainwell. There's a very easy path for Saquon to get to 70 targets, I think.
Yeah, I think this contract just tells you that they like Saquon a lot more than Swift. So we should expect Saquon to get more volume than Swift. And the offense is obviously great.
And I think that, I mean, it's going to be a very different Eagles offense next year. I think the absolute prayer would be that they just stop running the tush push as much with Jason Kelce retired. And maybe those 1 yard touchdowns do start going back to Saquon Barkley's way. That'll remain to be seen until the season starts to play out. But this is, I think it definitely helps his dynasty profile. Because I mean, if you had dreamt up all the possible landing spots for Saquon Barkley, the Eagles with Swift gone and out of the picture had to have been number one. I mean,
Dallas for me. Dallas was where I wanted to see him. Dallas, I think, would be a little more diverse in their approach with him, and we don't have to worry about a quarterback vulturing touchdowns around the end zone. Dallas was my number one, but I mean, it's a win. He goes from a team with a bottom half offense to a team with a top 5 offense. I think Kellen Moore a year from now is probably going to be a head coach in the NFL if he just does what he's supposed to do with this group of talented players. It's a win. And let's also take it one more step. You sign Saquon Barkley. This could be like, a lot of teams always talk about, we want to protect our quarterback. We want to get him less carries. But I think Philadelphia really could be trying to protect Jalen Hurts a little bit more. This might kind of take a few of those goal line carries away from Jalen Hurts, a little bit less tush push than we saw in previous seasons? Do you think this is maybe Jalen Hurts takes a slight knock in his rushing profile, Dario?
I think so. I mean, I think that they probably Jalen Hurts was playing through that knee injury all last season, so I think we might see something this upcoming year with Jalen Hurts where he's getting fewer carries, but he's actually being, more explosive with them. That's probably the most likely outcome. I think that, like the way that offense functioned last year, I think is definitely going to look like a historical outlier in terms of, that 10-1 start. They didn't have to throw the ball all that much. They were kind of controlling games, totally imploded. Just a really weird season for the Eagles. And like we said, the bottom line is Saquon Barkley is going to get probably all of DeAndre Swift's usage plus at least half of what Kenneth Gainwell was getting. And it's going to be like wheels up.
Derrick Henry is still out there. Does this make us think that Derrick Henry is going to be a Dallas Cowboy or a Baltimore Raven? I think that those were the two that made the most sense. Hopefully we get a little bit of clarity on that. I also want to get your reactions on Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson signs with the New England Patriots. This has been a player that we have liked at Player Profiler since his rookie season. There's been a lot of frustration in the way that Washington used Antonio Gibson. Obviously, Brian Robinson took the job, this year. Antonio Gibson still gets targets. Two-pronged here for you guys. Does this do anything to make you a little nervous about Ramondre Stevenson in this offense, that they're bringing in another running back that can catch the ball? Does this do anything for Antonio Gibson to give him a little bit of a bounce? Or is this sort of okay, whatever, he's a Patriot? Evan?
I kind of see this as a negative for both players. I was not super excited about Ramondre to begin with. He was very inefficient last year. And Gibson will definitely take some targets away and possibly some rushing work. We were hoping to see a better landing spot for Gibson, but something like this was most likely to happen. As we've seen throughout Gibson's career, he just hasn't panned out the way that we hoped. And I don't think we expect that offense to be great next year. So a split backfield like that is less than ideal.
What about you, Dario?
I think the best thing that could happen is they start lining him up at wide receiver, given that team's roster.
Well, now you got me excited, Dario, all of a sudden, because you're right. Like Demario Douglas, Kendrick Bourne, we could find some targets for Gibson, line up Gibson and Stevenson at the same time. At the end of the day, though, guys, this is Alex Van Pelt as the offensive coordinator. A lot of not that great players. It's kind of an offense we're going to look to avoid a little bit. It's ugly. And go say what you're going to say about Zeke.
I was going to say, I was looking at the numbers the other day, right? I'm doing projections, and I could not believe that Zeke had 184 carries last year. Like, it definitely did not seem like he got up to that number. So that's just crazy. He had 3.5 yards a carry on almost 200 carries last season. So there's room for some juice in this offense. Zeke also had 50 receptions. So in case you guys didn't realize just how much he was targeted last season, there's room for both of these guys to get some touches. The quality of those touches probably not going to remain very good, but it's certainly something.
Wow, guys, this is it's coming at us very, very quickly. Devin Singletary could possibly return to Houston, and I'll say this from a dynasty perspective: pick 59 overall with Houston was one that I've circled in the NFL draft as if they get boxed out. If they get boxed out at running back, that could be an extremely appealing pick for us, and one that I think dynasty managers will be really excited about for their rookie drafts. Houston, it seems like they want to add some upgraded talent at running back. That could be arguably the first or second running back off of the board, however they rank them. And you start talking about like Jalen Wright in a Houston offense, Trey Benson in a Houston offense, Blake Corum in a Houston offense. You start getting really excited about that landing spot next to CJ Stroud. So there's sort of a cascade effect here. Shout out to Derrick Henry's agent. Could you please have him sign sometime in the next 15 minutes so we can get off the air here shortly, guys. We'd love to react to a Derrick Henry signing, but this is insane. Since we got on the air, guys, Kirk Cousins, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley have all signed. Wild.
Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, Calvin Ridley's another domino we're waiting for now. I think those are the big ones. Right?
Yeah.
Derrick Henry,
yep.
Calvin Ridley, respectively. Another one that went kind of under the radar, Colby Parkinson to the Rams for $25 million over 3 years or something like that. It kind of a bigger contract than any of us would have probably guessed for Colby Parkinson.
Pour one out for the Davis Allen drafters, guys. Davis Allen has been like a sneaky tight end 3 on underdog builds. You know, not a really good indication for their plans for Davis Allen. Giving Parkinson
I'm sure it'll be like a gross tight end rotation there.
It's gross. Yeah. And tight end contracts are always weird. There's always a couple of these. There's always a couple of these signings in every free agent period where you see these veteran tight ends get these big contracts. A lot of teams like being in 12 personnel a lot. They want to have that veteran tight end that they can do that with. And I don't know, Josh Oliver last year. Josh Oliver got the bag from your Minnesota Vikings, Evan, and this could be kind of like that. So I don't know. You don't want to bury Davis Allen yet. Shout out to Toronto Dave. He says it's a Catalano wine mixer. Great reference, Toronto Dave. I love that one. And it's a movie that Dario has seen, which I like too. You know, you've seen Step Brothers, correct, Dario?
Oh, yeah. It's been a while.
Yeah, this is a long-standing joke at Player Profiler. I'm a little bit older than Dario. I know you guys can't tell by the video, but I'm a little older than Dario, and we've talked about a lot of the movies that I loved when I was his age. He has not seen, so we have time to change that this off.
So did you confirm that Dune 2 is better than Godfather 2, Theo?
Did not see Dune 2. I had a busy weekend, but I really want to see Dune 2. I enjoyed Dune 1, so that's one we can kind of agree on, Dario. It's definitely not Godfather level, but I understand it's a very good movie, and I'd like to see it. Let's take Hodo Prime says Packers looking to get rid of Aaron Jones now. Yeah, we talked about that. Aaron Jones would be a big domino to fall. Played his football at UTEP. He might be an interesting Houston Texan if they can swing that one. I would like to see that one. Let's see if we have any other good questions in the chat on Reddit. I'm answering one on, here's one, a good one, guys. And I went with the Los Angeles Chargers just because I think that there's a lot of holes to fill on their offense potentially. But from your perspective, which NFL team will have the most fantasy-friendly draft in April? The LA Chargers could potentially have their RB1 and their wide receiver 1 out of this draft class if they move on from Keenan Allen. Anybody else that we're... What's that,
If
Dario?
they move on from Keenan Allen, what are we talking about?
Keenan Allen might not be a Charger this year. There's some rumblings
I
here.
think that they'll cut some of Mike Williams, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa. They'll keep Keenan, I think.
And Malik Neighbors or Roma Dunze at the 105 with a potential for a running back in the 3rd round. The Chargers are the team that are going to have the most fantasy-friendly draft in April. I really believe that.
I think the Texans running back room is definitely the spot to watch, as you already mentioned. Obviously, all the teams that draft quarterbacks are looking at huge fantasy shakeups for their weapons. We probably won't, it's going to be a big projection until we start seeing that in season. But I mean, the Commanders, the Bears, probably the Patriots, those are teams that their whole outlook is going to change drastically. And then, I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Cardinals, if that all pans out, and that's going to be the absolute nuts.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And the Cardinals are also an interesting running back landing spot based on the age of James Conner and the fact that they don't really have an RB2 with Amari DiMercato, Michael Carter.
That
was
good running the ball last year.
First 1,000-yard season of James Conner's career.
And he missed a couple games.
That's right.
Yeah, that's an interesting spot. I think that the most exciting landing spots would be Buffalo, Kansas City, even Baltimore with these wide receiver 2s. If we got like a Brian Thomas or Xavier Worthy or Adonai Mitchell, someone like that, to one of those really good teams as their wide receiver 2, I think you will see their price skyrocket.
Shout out to Hodo Prime, who Dario wants you to acknowledge that 1984 Dune, that like 4 people saw.
I saw it actually the other day in preparation. It was something.
It was something. Okay. One word movie reviews from Dario Offstien right here on Player Profiler, Reddit, AMA. Guys, I think we're reaching the end here. Let's hang on for about 5 minutes until we see if we get a late signing. And let's double check. Why this is another good call. Jack Senzen in the chat says that the Cowboys are low-key an interesting team for the NFL draft because they need a wide receiver too, with Brandon Cooks an aging one there, and they need a RB1. If they miss, there's been a lot of rumblings earlier in the offseason that Dallas was going to use a draft pick on a running back to save money. Then there was been all these free agent running back rumors and the Derrick Henry rumors to Dallas recently, and potentially them re-signing Pollard. Obviously, Pollard's gone. Henry's still out there, but that could just go back to the initial thoughts and draft a running back, and that would be a ridiculously good landing spot for one of these rookies if Dallas uses that late second. They've been attached to Jonathan Brooks because they love taking injury discounts. Dario, you agree that would be like wheels up for a rookie to land in Dallas?
Yeah, I mean, geez, I think the Jonathan Brooks to Jerry Jones has already been, slightly hinted at in the draft world, but I don't think there's anyone in this class that you'd feel good about it as in the same way that Breece Hall landed with the Jets or even Kenneth Walker with the Seahawks. Like, I don't think there's a running back who, if they landed on the Cowboys, we'd feel that good about from the jump, right?
Is Austin Eckler dust, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a dust. Baltimore Raven.
No, he's not a Baltimore
Don't
Raven.
Do
he's
that, Dario.
a Toronto Argonaut. Toronto Argonaut. Austin Eckler will land somewhere, and we're going to see a short term like bump in his ADP on underdogs. People talk themselves into it, but usually when we see these sort of running backs regress to this level that we saw Eckler regress to, usually it's not a good indication that they're going to have a big fantasy bounce back. And he's been a guy that's been reliant on being explosive, being very quick out there, especially out of the backfield as a receiver. So if he loses just a little bit, it's not a good thing for Austin Eckler. And yeah, I think Eckler's pretty dusty.
Yeah.
Okay, here's one.
The numbers came in on the Cousins contract, by the way, in case you guys hadn't heard yet. 4 years, 180 million with 100 million guaranteed. So 45 million a year over the course of 4 years is, we've definitely seen bigger quarterback contracts, but 36-year-old coming off of an Achilles tear, that's big money.
I mean, it's big money, but you look at the amount of money being given to guys like Daniel Jones in New York.
Oh, I think Daniel Jones is a historically bad outlier. I mean, look at the money that Baker Mayfield got yesterday compared to Daniel Jones, and because I don't think it was Gettleman that gave out that contract. Who's the GM with the Giants now? It's God, who was that? But the Giants are probably kicking themselves over that contract every day. Joe Shane, yeah,
Joe Shane.
Guys, Nico Collins question. The market for Nico Collins does not match up with where he's being drafted on Underdog and where we have him at Player Profiler. Where do you think is an appropriate draft pick that you would feel comfortable trading Nico Collins away for in this draft class? I mean, I would not trade Nico Collins straight up for in single QB. I'm not trading him for the 108, the 109. The 110, 111, 112. I'm just not doing it because I think he could give us a low-end wide receiver one season.
For the next 5 seasons, I mean.
The range of outcomes for Nico Collins is quite similar to the range of outcomes for Brandon Ayuk this year, but the dynasty market is completely different. Would you agree on that one?
Yeah. Yeah, I think like 105 is kind of the inflection point in one QB for me. I like Nico a lot. Although last week I did get massacred on Reddit because I said I'd rather have Rashee Rice. They love Nico over on Dynasty Reddit. I think 105 is like the inflection point.
And 105, it's funny because that's one of those picks where the team with the 105 and single is not going to give it up for Nico. and the team that has
Right.
it's one of these players it's very difficult to move.
Well, that's what this comment saying. This guy couldn't even get the 112 for Nico Collins. I mean,
Yeah, and I don't know about
Right.
that one. Like,
I'd
I think that's not
hold
Yeah.
all day, sir.
that's not I don't think that's a normal thing. And I've offered the 112, 111 for Nico, and I've been turned down in a lot of these FFPC type leagues. Do you think Brandon Ayuk
Yes.
will get out of San
Yes.
Francisco this year?
Yes, he stays. Or sorry, yes, he stays.
He's
They're
staying.
not
Yeah.
letting him go.
Yeah,
Agreed.
they're not gonna get rid of Ayuk, no shot. And then do the Steelers keep Deontay Johnson? I actually would say Deontay Johnson is going to get moved. I think the writing's on the wall. It's the final year of the contract. They're going to look to get something out of him. I think that this is one where I do believe the rumblings that Deontay Johnson is going to get traded. I think this will happen before the NFL draft, and there's a chance that he gets moved on NFL draft weekend. Your thoughts on this, Dario and Evan?
I think I agree with that. There's definitely a demand for receivers of his caliber, and I mean, God, like Deontay Johnson, I could totally see him having the best year of his career as soon as he leaves Pittsburgh. Like that's just been a very strange career trajectory that he's had.
This is
for sure.
weird.
And I think
go ahead,
I think he's also like a poor fit in Pittsburgh with Russ too. I think they definitely should try to trade him.
This one we're not going to take. Shout out to Jared Dean. Really appreciate the comment, but we spent like 4 minutes talking Calvin Austin on the Sonic Truth podcast. I'm all Calvin Austin out. Evan, let everybody know where they can find you.
At Evan Ringler FF on Twitter.
Yeah, and Evan is a big part of our Dynasty rankings. Dario, Evan, and I, along with the Podfather, we're going to be meeting up very soon, guys, probably tomorrow, to try to make some sense of these running back landing spots. Dario, let everybody know what you're working on and where they can find you.
Oh, we're gonna have the injury finder coming down the pipe soon, the breakout finder as well. The seasonal rankings are live on PlayerProfiler, as well as the best ball rankings. So we're already chugging away for 2024. Very exciting times. So yeah, definitely tune in. And as always, I'm on Twitter at Dario Offstien.
Shout out to Alex Schickman. Eric Gray will not get a shot. The next Giants starting running back's probably not on their roster right now. You can find me at the OG Fantasy on Twitter. You can find us right here every single Monday doing these AMAs. We're going to stream most of them. And you can get your questions in on Reddit as well. They've been a lot of fun. We just dropped the Sonic Truth. Check it out. It's right here on YouTube. And you'll find it as a podcast tomorrow. I have a Dynasty Life with Heath Cummings tomorrow. And guys, I'm trying to write this free agent reaction piece that should drop on the website tomorrow as well, but it keeps getting harder and harder and more guys to write about. So I was thinking it was going to be just Pollard and Swift, but I'm going to be up late tonight. So stick with us here at Player Profiler. We got you covered all throughout your Dynasty offseason. Definitely check out our partners over at Reddit Dynasty. It's a great place to discuss Dynasty and to find threads like this. Have a great rest of your afternoon and enjoy the free agency.
See you guys.